Okay, good day, folks. Today, we're going to have a very direct and brief conversation about plagiarism. Guys, plagiarism is a fantastic word. Everybody in academia likes to throw it around. This is plagiarism. This is academic dishonesty. And in truth, most plagiarism is not intentional. Most plagiarism is well-intended and accidental. So the purpose of this presentation is to help you avoid plagiarism, how to avoid putting yourself in a good space academically and avoiding the words academic dishonesty ever in your career. So we're going to go through a very brief agenda today. First, we're going to be talking about what plagiarism actually is, how people find themselves in hot water, what are the common mistakes that people make, what are best practices for avoiding this in your personal and academic life, and any other associated issues. Guys, let me be direct. My goal here early on is to help you be successful in your papers and assignments in this class and beyond. Not to put anybody on a report, but to show you how to keep yourself in the clear. So let's start off with what is plagiarism. Directly stated, if you are using somebody else's words or concepts as your own thoughts, you are plagiarizing if you do not cite them. So if you are putting in a citation, let me give you an example. If you are putting in a citation for direct verbiage that you took from somebody else and you don't have quotations around it, it's still plagiarism. If you, for example, paraphrase somebody else's words and didn't cite it, that could also be considered plagiarism. So the purpose of talking about this is to make sure that you're living up to an academic standard. Anytime you have an idea that you're including in a paper that requires citations and you're not citing it, or anytime you're using somebody else's direct verbiage or the majority of their verbiage as your own, you are potentially committing plagiarism. Now, it can be intentional or unintentional, and the majority of plagiarism is unintentional. People simply don't know how to cite. So, for example, if you quoted me directly and put a citation in, but didn't put quotation marks around my exact words, you're plagiarizing, even though you had good intentions to cite properly. So let's give you an example. Intentional plagiarism is when people are really directly using other people's work. The biggest single way that this happens is copy and paste. People copy verbiage from an article they found online or a website and paste it into their own document. Sometimes it's laziness. Sometimes it's a lack of skill on the part of the writer. They don't feel that they can write good verbiage. They don't feel they can write at the level that their source could. So why not just use somebody else's? What are the chances that we're going to be caught? How do we as instructors catch it? Well, there's lots of ways. If we use a plagiarism checker, there are actual databases out there that run documents through a series of databases to see if exact words or phrases got picked up. But the most common way I pick it up is somebody's typically not a fantastic writer, and all of a sudden they sound like a New York Times journalist. Sometimes it's because their article or their words came from the New York Times. So if the writing style changes. I've seen plagiarism where people didn't bother to change the font or even the color of the font. Or sometimes the sentences simply just don't fit. It seems like it was just crammed into a paragraph. Sometimes people try to get around this by changing a word or two or chopping up the sentence and using it in other places. Ultimately, it usually gets caught. So that's what we refer to as intentional plagiarism. Any of these things are intentional plagiarism. So what's unintentional plagiarism? Well, that means you forgot to cite a source or you forgot to use quotations, for example. And this one tends to inspire sympathy from instructors in bachelor's and master's level programs. Meaning, if I believe that you as a student really were trying to do the right thing, I'm probably more biased to give you a second chance to get it right. So it gets the most sympathy from instructors. Intentional plagiarism does not typically get a lot of sympathy from most instructors. So what are some of the most common mistakes that people make? Well, again, anytime you take exact verbiage from a source and put it in with quotes, even if you cite it, even if you put the author's name in, that's still plagiarism. Copy and paste is a horrible thing to do. I'm encouraging you guys. I know some people think about using it as a placeholder. Oh, I'll go back and paraphrase this later. Don't do it. Forgetting to cite is also one of the big culprits as well. People simply forget to do it. So let's talk about how you can avoid this. What are some best practices? Guys, in academic writing, if you're in a master's level program, quotes should only be used if they really mean something. Here's my context. If you hear Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech that begins with the phrase, "I have a dream," those words mean something. I don't need to read somebody's quoted statistics or basic information. If you are giving statistics or financial data or whatever, that does not need direct quotations. Paraphrase that information. Don't copy and paste. Instead of copy and pasting somebody else's verbiage and saying, "I'll change it later," when you're reading the article, type it in the document in your own words. If you have the option of using something like Turnitin or VeriCite, check it out. Here's the thing too, guys. A lot of these packages are really good at picking up unique phrases, for example. And think about this too. If somebody asked you where you got your information from and you had to explain yourself, think about how you would. In other words, if you're using direct quotes constantly, I've seen students submit literally 10 pages that were nearly all quotations from other sources. That student might not know anything about the material they just presented because they did not have to internalize and put it in their own words. So think about how you would back up your own work if somebody were calling you on your words. So let's talk about some of the other issues. Guys, it drives me crazy when I'm reading a paragraph and all of a sudden there's just a quotation that's randomly there. Even if it's cited, it's just randomly there for no reason. Always give context for why a quote is there. Telling the reader, as Jim Smith says in his 2016 article, quote, "There is no such thing as good writing, only good writing," unquote. Only use quotes when they add something to the document. And again, if you've got entire paragraphs of quotes, unless it is really good stuff, try to avoid that. Anytime you're able to take and put things in your own word, you are making instructors happy because you're showing us you've taken the time to understand and internalize this content, and hopefully you synthesize some new ideas out of it. So save yourself that academic dishonesty charge. Avoid plagiarism when you can. So in terms of how to quote, I despise getting quotes in the middle of articles that simply are a quote right there. There's no such thing as good writing, only good rewriting. Nothing wrong with the quote. That verbiage carries some weight, but don't just randomly insert the sentence. Here's the right way to do it. And according to Tonka in 2018, comment, "There was no such thing as good writing, only good rewriting." That's a way to put a quote into context. And by the way, I'm using APA citation. That's my preferred method. You may have your own preferred method of citation as well. For purposes of my classes, I generally require APA. So don't ever just stick a quote inside a paragraph. I know academic authors do it, and I hate it when I read it in journals too. Always provide context. So when to paraphrase? Okay, look at this. We got the Department of Labor that's telling us employment rates have reached an all-time low of 3.9%. There is not a damn thing unique about that verbiage. We know that we're at a record low of 3.9% unemployment. Put it in your own words. You don't need to provide a quotation. If it's easy to summarize information or data, don't quote it, paraphrase it. Now, you're using the specific statistics still, and you're citing it properly. So, in summary, anytime you're passing off somebody else's ideas as your own, that's plagiarism. Most of it's unintentional, but it can be unintentional. Avoid copy and paste, paraphrase, and cite. Guys, I hope this has been helpful. If you have questions, if you're ever in a situation where you're wondering if something is plagiarism, you can always contact your instructor, a research librarian, or anybody in the Center for Academic Success. That's what we're here for, or the Writing Center. We're here to help you and to make sure that you are understanding how to have good academic writing. With that, have a wonderful day, guys.